A friend of mine is a bow hunter, not for sport, for food. One day we were out in the woods. Hours passed, nothing moved. Then suddenly a deer appeared. I reached for my phone to film, excited. He just raised his hand to signal. Still, he didn't move. He didn't breathe heavy. He didn't rush. He waited, focused. Then one smooth draw, one calm breath, release, clean shot, perfect silence. Afterward, he said, "You don't chase the moment. You prepare for it, then meet it with calm." That's Stoicism. Life throws chaos at you, but you don't panic. You don't overreact. You don't shoot wildly. You breathe. You choose your moment. You respond, not out of fear or ego, but clarity. Ever feel like your mind's racing, your mouth's moving faster than your thoughts, and your focus is scattered across everything except what truly matters? You're not alone. We live in a world drowning in noise, where quick opinions are mistaken for strength, and knee-jerk reactions pass for wisdom. A lot of men are out here moving fast but getting nowhere, burned out, disconnected, drowning in distraction. But the Stoics figured something out a long time ago. Real strength isn't about doing more. It's about doing better. It's not about shouting louder. It's about knowing when to stay quiet. It's not about endless thinking. It's about steering your thoughts with purpose. This video is about that kind of clarity. It's your way back from mental clutter and emotional noise. You'll learn how to sharpen your focus, calm your reactions, and move with quiet purpose. Because when you think less, talk less, and focus more, the world doesn't own you, you own it. Be like the archer, still your mind. Aim with intention. Let the noise pass. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because this is your moment to reclaim your strength, one focused breath at a time. Let's walk this path together. Number 1. Thoughts aren't facts. Sometimes a single thought can derail your whole day. Not an event, not a catastrophe, just a sentence whispered quietly inside your head. I'm not good enough. Nothing's going to change. What if everything goes wrong? It sneaks in like a shadow, subtle but heavy, and before you know it, you're living as if those words are etched in stone. But here's the truth. They're not. The Stoics saw this clearly. Epictetus said, "It's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them." It's not reality that breaks us. It's the stories we tell ourselves about reality. And yet, how often do we let a passing thought harden into a personal truth? How often do we mistake mental noise for divine instruction? Let's try a simple image. Picture yourself at a train station. Each thought is a train rolling through. One is packed with regret, another carries fear, another anger, self-doubt, comparison, resentment. But here's the key. You don't have to board any of them. You can just watch. You can stand on the platform, grounded, centered. You can breathe and let those thoughts pass by like weather, uninvited but not in control. This image might seem basic, but it's a powerful Stoic practice. It's the heart of building inner calm. Because when you chase your thoughts, when you grab onto every fear, every insecurity, you lose yourself. You get pulled into stories that may not even be true. But when you watch them instead of engaging, their grip loosens. They lose their edge. They fade. I remember a conversation with a guy I used to work with, an operations lead, sharp, respected, always calm under pressure. Late one night, he admitted something that stuck with me. He said every single morning, before he even got out of bed, a knot formed in his stomach. Not because of his job, not because of other people, but because of what his mind told him the second he opened his eyes. You're behind. You're screwing this up. You're not doing enough. For years, he lived like those thoughts were facts, like they were handed down by some higher power with a gavel in its hand. Until one day he picked up Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and something clicked. He realized he could create distance between himself and those voices. He didn't have to accept them as truth. He started saying, "I'm having the thought that I'm failing." Not "I'm failing," just having the thought. That small shift in language cracked the illusion. It wasn't him who was flawed. It was just a thought floating through, like a cloud, like smoke. And as we all know, if you don't feed the fire, the smoke clears. This isn't about forcing yourself to think positive or suppress your darker feelings. That's just another version of self-deception. No, this is about not being ruled by the content of your thoughts. It's about remembering that the mind is a machine. It produces thoughts constantly, many of them distorted, reactive, left over from childhood, past relationships, old mistakes. But you are not your thoughts. You're the space they pass through. You're the one who chooses what stays and what goes. That's where the Stoic path begins. Not with denial, but awareness. You don't need a mountaintop monastery. You don't need a week-long retreat. You need moments, tiny windows in the day where you pause, get still, and check in. When a thought stings, don't react. Don't chase it. Don't push it away. Just see it. Ask yourself, is this thought really true? Do I have any proof? Is this helping me grow or pulling me down? And if it doesn't serve you, let it go. Not with resistance, not with drama, just with calm. Like setting down a heavy bag you no longer need. Each time you do this, you carve out inner space. And in that space, something deeper rises. Clarity, steadiness, strength. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself. The kind that just is. It's not magic. It's discipline. It's choosing again and again to return to the platform. To stay grounded while the noise of your mind rumbles through. The Stoics didn't try to silence their minds. They trained them. Because they knew an undisciplined mind is like a wild horse. It'll drag you through the mud, off cliffs, into chaos. But a trained mind becomes your partner. It walks beside you. It lights the way forward. So the next time your brain says, you're not enough, or you're too late, or this is hopeless, breathe. Recognize it for what it is, a thought, a train, a whisper in passing. You don't have to board. You don't have to believe it. You can just stay with yourself. Because thoughts don't define you, what you do with them does. And that is the beginning of real strength. Quiet, internal, unshakable. Number 2, the power of saying less. The stronger your soul, the less it needs to justify itself. Marcus Aurelius. Some silences make people uncomfortable. Others make them pay attention. In a world where speed is mistaken for intelligence and volume for truth, saying less is a quiet rebellion. Not against others, but against your own ego. The ego always wants the last word. It wants to prove, defend, dominate. It wants to clap back, to be heard, to win. But you're not here to win arguments. You're here to master yourself. There was this guy in our office who didn't say much during meetings. Everyone respected him, but kept their distance. Not because he was cold or arrogant, but because he was different. While others filled the room with opinions, he stayed quiet. He listened. He observed. And when he finally spoke, it felt like the whole room leaned in. Not because he raised his voice, but because he didn't waste a single syllable. He didn't defend, didn't explain, didn't entertain fluff. He only spoke when it mattered, and that made him unforgettable. The Stoics considered this restraint a virtue. A wise man doesn't talk out of habit. He talks by choice. He doesn't engage in every verbal skirmish. He knows some battles are won simply by walking away from them. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul grows stronger when it remains still amidst chaos. That's the real test. Can you hold your ground when the world pushes you to respond, to defend, to explode? Saying less isn't about fear. It's not about weakness or passivity. It's about deliberate restraint. It's about knowing which words are necessary and which are just noise. Not every jab deserves a counterpunch. Not every taunt needs a comeback. Not every question requires a full explanation. When you try to answer everything, defend everything, you scatter your energy, you unravel. But when you choose your silence with purpose, you sharpen your mind. You become the man who doesn't react, he acts. The Stoics didn't care about being liked. They cared about living with virtue. Part of that virtue is brevity. It's measuring your words the way a fighter measures his punches. Calculated, efficient, impactful. One extra word can ignite a fire you never meant to light. One well-timed pause can diffuse a bomb. Think back to the last time you spoke out of impulse. Maybe it was a sarcastic jab, a defensive retort, or an opinion you didn't even believe in. Was it worth it? Or did it leave you hollow, patching the damage with regret? Silence, on the other hand, doesn't leave a trail to clean up. It gives you time. It grants perspective. It hands control back to you. And here's something powerful. When you say less, you become more present. You start listening, not listening to reply, not to defend, but to understand. And when people feel understood, they open up. The energy changes. They change, and so do you. In that quiet space, your words stop being reactions. They become choices. Epictetus once said we must first control our impulses, then our words. There's no greater freedom than not needing to explain yourself. That kind of freedom isn't loud. It lives in your stillness, your gaze, your breath. It's in the calm you carry. Even when you could dominate the room with a few sharp words, saying less isn't just a vibe. It's a philosophy. It's a discipline, a daily practice of self-respect. It reminds you, control begins with the tongue, and respect isn't something you yell for. It's something you become. The man who masters silence doesn't need to make an entrance. His presence speaks before he does. So next time you feel the itch to fire back, prove your point, or out-talk the noise, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, is it necessary? Is it useful? Is it true to who I want to be? If the answer's no, keep your words. Let them stay inside, sharpened for when it truly counts. Because sometimes the greatest show of strength is saying nothing. And in that silent space, you don't shrink. You grow, stronger, calmer, clearer, more you. Number 3, control what you can control. There are moments when life feels like it's closing in on you. Everything breaks at once. Plans collapse. People disappoint. Opportunities vanish. The past won't let go, and the future looms like a threat. You look around, and it feels like the world is gunning for you. In that chaos, one question cuts through all the noise. What now? Most people panic. Some blame everyone else. Others just give up. But then there's a different kind of man, the kind who doesn't flinch outward. He turns inward. He knows that while he can't control the storm, he can control his stance in it. Epictetus called it the Great Divide, the brutal, liberating truth that there are two types of things in life, what you can control and what you can't. That idea sounds simple, but it demands something rare: personal responsibility. It forces you to stop fighting the wind and start steering the rudder. You can't control if someone betrays you. You can control whether it turns you bitter. You can't control the past. You can control whether it becomes your prison or your teacher. You can't control how life hits, but you can choose whether you keep standing. And in that moment, when you stop wrestling with what you can't change and take full ownership of what you can, that's where power returns to you. Picture a ship on a wild sea. The captain doesn't control the wind, the waves, or the storms, but he does control the sails, the rudder, and the decision to keep sailing. A Stoic lives like that. He doesn't pretend the storm doesn't exist. He doesn't lie to himself with false optimism. He simply asks, "Where is my leverage?" And from that answer, he acts. I once met a man who had lost everything: his business, his marriage, his savings. 20 years of work, gone. He told me the hardest part wasn't the loss, it was the sense of helplessness, the identity collapse, the silence of phones that used to ring nonstop. For months he spiraled, blaming others, drowning in what-ifs, stuck in a cycle of rage and regret. But then one morning he sat down, opened a blank notebook, and drew 2 columns. On one side he listed everything he couldn't control: the economy, the market crash, the betrayals. On the other side, he wrote what he still had control over: his routine, his mindset, his discipline, his willingness to start again. And that was the turning point. From that list, he didn't just rebuild a business, he rebuilt himself. Because when your focus gets clean, your strength follows. And when your strength is aligned with what actually matters, you become hard to shake. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire. He faced wars, plagues, betrayals, the death of children. Yet even with the weight of Rome on his shoulders, he knew, happiness doesn't come from outside forces. It comes from the quality of your thoughts. He couldn't control fate, but he could control his response. He could stay steady in his principles even when the world refused to cooperate. That's what real strength looks like. Not perfection, not control over everything, but steadiness in the storm. It's when everything's falling apart and you say, this I cannot change, but this part right here, I can own. You control your attitude. You control your breath. You control your next move. When life unravels, don't flail. Go back to your core, your roots, the part of you that doesn't depend on anything outside of you. And if you ever feel lost again, because you will, stop, breathe, ask yourself, what am I trying to control right now that isn't mine? What is still mine to steer? Let go of the first, double down on the second. Even if it seems small, a habit, a mindset, a morning routine, that's where momentum lives. That's where strength begins to stack. Because when you stop pouring energy into battles you can't win and start pouring it into the life you can build, step by step, you become immovable. That's what keeps a man standing when everything else crumbles. Not luck, not perfect conditions, but the relentless daily decision to focus on what's his to own. This is how real change begins. Not out there, not someday, but right here, right now, in how you think, in how you respond, in who you choose to be, especially when no one else gets a vote. Number 4, focus on what makes you grow. Maybe you've been there. A conversation ends, but you keep replaying it in your head for days. A mistake from months ago still keeps you up at night. Someone hurt you, and even though they're long gone, the wound's still raw. Not because of what happened, but because you keep feeding it. Your mind's like fertile soil. It grows whatever you plant. If you sow pain, guilt, or resentment, don't expect to harvest peace. The problem isn't remembering, it's staying stuck there. In that moment, in that thought, looping like a broken record. Sometimes without realizing it, you turn your mind into a prison, and you're holding the key. But you're not doomed to stay trapped because what you think isn't a life sentence. It's a choice. This isn't about ignoring the past or pretending everything's fine. It's about redirecting your attention over and over to what builds you up, what makes you stronger. A man who keeps looking back doesn't move forward, no matter how fast he's running. It doesn't matter how hard you try if your focus is on what you can't change. But when you choose to look where there's light, something opens inside you. Not loudly, not instantly, but it opens. And that's where real growth starts. Marcus Aurelius, in the middle of wars, betrayals, and illness, wrote in his Quiet Nights that the soul grows stronger by focusing only on what's essential, on what life demands of you today. Not plus, not yesterday, not tomorrow today. Because the present, flawed as it is the only place you can act. Your attention is the bridge between who you are and who you could become. Every time you catch your mind wandering and pull it back to now, you're flexing that invisible muscle called self-discipline. Think about any day of your life. You've had thousands of thoughts, some fleeting, some heavy, but only a few shaped your actions. Only a few stole your energy. The trick isn't to stop them, it's to stop feeding them. To do that, you need to come back. Back to your breath, back to your body, back to what actually matters. A guy once commented on a Stoic video I saw, "Every time I start moving forward, my mind drags me back to the same memory, to the same person who hurt me, and I lose hours there, like it's still happening." I got it. We've all been there. But the key isn't to run from the thought. It's time to face it, acknowledge it. Then with resolve, decide it doesn't get any more of your space today. Even if it's just for an hour, send your energy towards something that pushes you forward. The Stoics didn't talk about bottling things up. They talked about transforming, taking that emotion, anchoring you down and using it as a signal of what you still need to release. That transformation starts with a quiet choice, what you give your attention to. Every time you choose to focus on what adds value, reading, training, building, you're telling the world and yourself, I'm not wasting another day on what I can't change. You can't control every thought that pops into your head, but you can decide which ones stick around. And that decision made day after day becomes your character, your direction, your strength. A strength that doesn't shout, but it shows in how you look, how you move, how you choose, in how you keep pushing forward quietly while others stay stuck in their own storms. Focusing isn't a gift, it's a skill. And like any skill, it gets sharper with practice. So when your mind tries to pull you back to pain, to the past, to chaos, don't fight it. Don't follow it. Breathe, acknowledge, and come back. Because where you place your attention, your life grows. Number 5, accept what is. If you're pained by something external, the pain isn't from the thing itself, it's from your perception of it, and you have the power to change that perception. Marcus Aurelius. Most men don't crumble under the load. They crumble from fighting it. They want life to be different. They want people not to let them down. They want the past to stop hurting. They want things to go as planned, but they didn't. And the more they wrestle with that reality, the more they wear themselves out, the more they break inside. Because it's not the weight that crushes you, it's how you carry it. Acceptance isn't giving up. It's not sitting back. It's stopping the fight against what's already done. It's looking square at the loss, the mistake, the betrayal, and deciding they won't define you, that you won't build who you are on what went wrong. Because as long as you keep wishing things were how you wanted, you're chained to a fantasy. But when you accept, you breathe. And from that new calm, you can pick a new path. A guy emailed me a while back. He said he'd spent years chasing his dad's approval, tried to be the perfect son, the hotshot professional, the tough guy, but nothing was ever enough. Then his dad passed away. The loss was brutal, but worse was the unresolved weight. The years he spent trying to be seen, accepted, valued. Then he read Epictetus and got it. Freedom starts when you stop begging for permission to be you. Living for someone else's nod is living in shackles, even if they're invisible. That day, he started talking to himself with respect, not because his dad gave it to him, but because he decided he didn't need it anymore. The Stoics taught that we can't control how the world sees us, but we can control how we see ourselves. Everyone's filtering reality through their own scars, beliefs, and fears. So if someone shuts you out, it doesn't mean you're worthless. It means they couldn't see your worth. But you can. You have to. Because if you don't, no one else will. Acceptance is also about dropping the guilt. That inner voice droning on about what you should have done, could have avoided, what you lost. The past can't be rewritten. It can only be understood and used as raw material to build. When you accept something's over, you can start again. Not from nothing, but from experience. Resilience isn't just enduring, it's learning. It's growing with every fall. Not with anger, with purpose. Not in a rush, with direction. Because every hit that doesn't break you reveals you. It shows what you can hold, what you can leave behind. And yeah, loneliness comes with it. When you stop living for approval, some people drift away. You don't fit their mold anymore. You're not easy to handle, but that's part of your freedom too. Being alone as your true self beats being surrounded, but cut off from who you are. So next time something doesn't go your way, don't ask, why me? Ask, what can I do now with what I've got? Don't wait for life to line up before you start living. Start now with what's here, with who you are, with what you know today. And every time you do, you'll feel something shift inside. Not noise, not hype. Something deeper, a root. A strength that doesn't come from the outside, but from accepting finally that you don't need to be anyone else. You just need to be fully you. Even when it hurts, even when it's hard, because in that acceptance, your real transformation begins. Number 6, embrace silence for clarity. There's a noise you can't hear, but it wears you down. It's not from the street, your phone, or other people. It's from inside, from a mind overloaded, chasing everything, trying to fix, solve, respond. We're surrounded by stimulation, opinions, comparisons, demands. From the second you wake up to the moment you crash, there's a constant push. Do more, know more, be more. And in that barrage, what you lose isn't time, it's direction. Without silence, everything blurs together. And when everything feels the same, nothing really matters. But silence isn't emptiness, it's a shelter. The only place you can hear what you actually think, what you actually feel, what you actually want. Maybe you've been walking a path you didn't choose, chasing goals that aren't yours, running after wins that don't fill you up because you never stopped to ask if they were really yours. Silence forces you to. Not with force, with clarity. Because when the outside world quiets down, what's left is who you are. A guy who watched my videos every day told me he used to pack his schedule tight. Couldn't stand downtime, not even 10 minutes of nothing. He said if he wasn't busy, he felt worthless. But one day in the middle of a panic attack, he forced himself to sit. No music, no phone, no one. 5 minutes, just 5. And in those 5 minutes, he cried. Not from sadness, from truth. He realized how much he'd been running, how much noise he'd used to drown out what he needed to face. Now every morning starts with silence. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Because that's where he found answers no book or advice could give. The Stoics didn't shy away from silence. They leaned into it. Marcus Aurelius wrote at night alone, not to show off, but to hear himself, to sort his mind before making choices that shaped an empire. He knew a noisy mind isn't a free mind. It's trapped in the clutter of what doesn't matter. Epictetus taught that the wise don't speak out of habit, but out of need. And what's left unsaid often says more than any speech. Silence lets you see. See what's worth your time and what's just a distraction. See who you are without the world's eyes on you. See your habits, your fears, your deepest wants. But it takes guts because silence also confronts you. It shows you hard truths. It reminds you of what you've been dodging. But that's where change happens. Not in comfort, but in the uneasy space where you stop running. If you're lost, don't chase more noise. Chase more silence. Turn off the clutter. Shut your mouth for a second. Not because you've got nothing to say, but because you need to hear yourself first. You need to reconnect with what matters. And that's not out there. It's not in the next goal or the next answer. It's in that quiet point where everything stops and you finally meet yourself. The world won't hush for you. There'll always be more news, more demands, more voices. But you can choose not to tune in to all of them. You can create a pause, a gap, a sacred space where you're you again, not what's expected, not what's copied, but what you are. Because only a man who can be quiet can truly listen. And only someone who listens to what matters can live with purpose. Silence isn't weakness. It's a mark of inner control, of mental clarity, of real power. Number 7, talk less, think more. Most men don't get in trouble for what they don't say. They get in trouble for what slips out without thought. A jab born from frustration, a careless opinion tossed into the air like it costs nothing, a quick-fire reply that lands like a grenade. The damage rarely starts out there in the world. It begins inside in that split-second gap where awareness should have been, but wasn't. Every time you speak without thinking, you drift from yourself. Your center weakens. And in a world addicted to noise, drifting from your center is a silent kind of self-sabotage. Today, everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants the mic, the last word, the viral moment. But the man who holds his tongue, the one who observes before reacting, becomes unforgettable. Not because he's passive, not because he lacks something to say, but because he's trained himself not to speak unless it matters. Think of your mind like a blade. Every word you let loose is a swing. If you're not sharpening that blade in silence, if you're swinging recklessly, you'll end up cutting yourself deeper than anyone else could. But when you learn when to strike, when to sheath it, when to simply watch and wait, you become solid, unshakable, hard to provoke, and even harder to manipulate. Talking less doesn't mean you're worth less. It means your energy is no longer leaking out through every emotion, every opinion, every insecure need to fill silence. It means you've got more clarity, more discipline, more direction, because not every thought needs an audience. Not every emotion needs to be broadcast, and not every comment deserves your energy. I remember a guy who reached out after a family meltdown. What triggered him wasn't some massive betrayal, It was something small, a throwaway remark. But the rage had been building under the surface for weeks. Resentments he didn't voice, emotions he didn't process, judgments he let pile up. Then boom, he lost it. Said things he didn't mean, and when the dust settled, all he felt was emptiness. Regret. Because the words didn't come from truth. They came from the chaos he hadn't dealt with. So he made a rule. Just one. Pause before responding. Even if it's just 2 seconds. Even if it feels like nothing. Those 2 seconds changed everything. They gave him space to think, to choose, to stop reacting like a puppet and start responding like a man. That pause became his shield, his compass, his reset. The Stoics leaned hard into the power of the pause. Epictetus said it well. We are not disturbed by events, but by our interpretation of them. And where does that interpretation take hold? In the space before your mouth opens. So if you want to change your life, change that space. Stretch it. Fill it with breath, with awareness, with stillness. That's where self-mastery lives. In a heated moment, silence can be your sharpest weapon, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've got the strength not to waste your fire. And when you finally speak, your words carry weight. Because you're not talking to win, you're talking to connect, to guide, to clarify. This isn't about bottling things up. It's not about silencing yourself to please others. That's weakness. This is about owning your voice so fully that you no longer feel compelled to use it recklessly. It's the opposite of suppression, it's precision. Modern life doesn't make this easy. Everything's a prompt. Every app wants a reaction. Every headline dares you to argue. But a grounded man doesn't take every bait. He doesn't post just to prove he exists. He doesn't talk just to avoid discomfort. He understands that restraint is not repression, it's refinement. And refinement is what separates amateurs from artists. You won't always control what you feel, but you can train yourself to control what you do with those feelings. That's the art. Watching your thoughts without becoming them. Feeling your emotions without letting them hijack your words. Taking a breath, holding back the jab. And saying only what needs to be said, when it needs to be said, how it should be said. Because the man who controls his words isn't just a better communicator. He's a man who respects himself. And that respect becomes visible, audible, unmistakable. People feel it in your presence, even in your silence, especially in your silence. Because in a room full of noise, a man who speaks with intention becomes a presence that commands attention. So next time your blood spikes, next time you're tempted to clap back, ask yourself, is it necessary? Is it helpful? Does it reflect the man I'm trying to be? If the answer's no, stay quiet. Not out of fear, but out of focus. Not to avoid conflict, but to avoid becoming something small. Because silence isn't weakness, it's leadership in its rawest form. Real strength isn't in how loud you can get or how fast you can fire off a reply. It's in the moments you choose to pause, to think, to hold your ground inwardly before doing anything outwardly. It's in the hours you spend reflecting instead of reacting, journaling instead of ranting, meditating instead of lashing out. Talk less, think more. That's the code. That's the challenge. That's the way forward. And remember, this isn't some abstract ideal. It's a daily practice, a choice you make again and again in small, forgettable moments that shape the big ones. When you learn to listen to yourself before speaking to others, when you know your silence is filled with clarity, not avoidance, you stop living from reaction. You start living from purpose. You stop needing to prove who you are. You just are. That's the shift. That's the power. So here's your invitation. Today, pause, breathe, let your first instinct pass, then act with intention. And when you do speak, speak from your center, from wisdom, not wounds, from clarity, not clutter. And if you ever lose your way, come back to this reminder. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's strength held in reserve. And when the moment is right, that strength speaks volumes.